Good morning. This is lecture 11. In this lecture we are going to continue with chapter 5, lifestyles around the world. And here in this topic we can speak about different experiences that different people lived, and the moral of the story or the lessons that they learned from the story. Last time we were speaking about the anecdote about the group of friends who went to a waterfall through a tunnel, and we saw that from that story they learned that the writer learned that he should think of him for himself before taking any decision. Today we are going to continue with the same chapter, but we will move to part 2, developing writing skills. In fact, in part 2 we are going to look at the past perfect tense and ways of using it. In narrative paragraphs we can speak about past events or past stories, and we can narrate those stories using the simple past tense and also the past perfect tense, because the events that we are narrating can happen before each other. So here we are going to look at the use of the past perfect tense. The past perfect tense in fact is used in narrative paragraphs to show that an action happened before another one in the past. So if we have two actions, one action happening before the other, we use the past perfect tense. The past perfect tense follows the structure had, not, plus past participle. So our structure is had or had not plus past participle. Remember that had can be used with all the personal pronouns or all the subjects. Had or had not plus past participle. The examples here are: we had been there many times. We have in this example had plus the past participle of the verb be. This is the past participle of the verb be. So the example here is: we had been there many times. We used the past perfect. The second example is: she hadn't asked for permission to go. Here we have hadn't. The negative of the verb had in the past is hadn't. So here it's a negative verb. She hadn't asked for permission to go. Asked is the past participle, and hadn't is the negative of the verb had in the past. So this is how you can form the past perfect tense. We are going to move to some of the uses of the past perfect tense. We can use the past perfect tense when we describe more than one action. In fact, when we describe more than one action, we have to use the past perfect to show that an action happened before another. So when describing more than one event in the past, we use the past perfect tense to show which action happened first. In fact, the past perfect tense should be used with the action that happened first. The action that happened first should have, or the verb of the action that happened first should be in the past perfect, to show that it is really an action that succeeded another one. The examples are: I had already left by the time he got back. I had already left by the time he got back. Here we have two actions. The first action is I had left. This is the first action. The second action is he got up. This is the second action or the second event. The second example is: we hadn't gone 1 mile when the car broke down. So here we have two actions. Again, we have two actions. The first one is that we hadn't gone 1 mile, and what happened next is that the car broke. The car broke down. So the act of having the car broken down came after not having gone 1 mile. Okay, so this is the form and the use of the past perfect tense. In fact, this is not a grammar lesson, but to know that the past perfect can express or show which action happened, which action or which event happened first, is something very important in writing. So in your writings, in your narrative paragraph writings, you have to use the past, or you can use the past perfect tense to show that two actions happened in different times, and to show that which action happened first. We move to the next slide. In fact, here we have an exercise from the book. It's exercise 1, page 93. If you open your books on page 93, you will find that exercise. The exercise says, identify the past perfect tense, find 3 sentences in the tunnel anecdote on page 89 and 90 that include the past perfect tense. So here we are going to find 3 sentences in which we have the past perfect, and then we have to write them in the chart below, showing which event happened first and which event happened last. So if we go to the anecdote that we have on page 89, we start reading the anecdote. It's on page 89. It says, one summer weekend, some friends and I decided to walk to a waterfall we had heard about. Here we have the first sentence. It is there in the slide. So in the anecdote, the sentence is, we decided to walk to a waterfall we had heard about. Here we have 2 actions. The first one is, or 2 events, decided to walk to a waterfall. The second, we had heard about. Which action happened, or which event happened earlier? Well, the event that happened earlier is that we had heard about the waterfall. We had heard about the waterfall. Someone came and told us about the waterfall. So here we write, we had heard about it. This event happened earlier. What happened next is that we decided to walk to a waterfall. So we write, we decided to walk to a waterfall. These are the 2 events written in order. The first event is we had heard about the waterfall. The second one is we decided to walk to the waterfall. Let's continue reading the text or the anecdote and see what is the second sentence in which we have the past perfect. We followed a railroad line. We had walked 5 or 6 miles when we came to a high rock wall where the tracks entered a tunnel. This is the second sentence. The second sentence says, we had walked 5 or 6 miles. We will write it here. We had walked 5 or 6 miles. 5 or 6 miles when we came to a high rock wall. To a high rock wall. In this sentence we have 2 verbs. The first one is in the past perfect. We had walked. The second one is in the simple past. We came. Let's see now and see which event happened earlier. Well, the first event is we had walked 5 or 6 miles. We write it in here. We had walked 5 or, let's say, 6 or 6 miles. This is the event that happened earlier. What is the event that happened later? The event that happened later is we came to a high rock wall. Good. So here we use the in the anecdote there is the use of the past perfect to show that one event happened before another. Let's continue reading the text. This tunnel didn't look very long, but it was narrow. We knew it would be dangerous if a train came because there would be no safe place for us to go. However, we couldn't climb the rocks or walk around them, and no one wanted to go back. Finally, we decided to go through the tunnel. I know it was foolish, but I went because the others did. As soon as we entered the tunnel, we saw that it was longer and darker than we had thought. Well, this is our third sentence. It says, we saw that it was longer and darker than we had thought. We saw that it was longer and darker than we had thought. We had thought. So here in this sentence we have two verbs. The first verb in the simple past, the second is in the past perfect tense. Let's look at the event that happened earlier. Well, I think that we had thought that the tunnel was long and dark is the event that happened earlier. So we write it here. We had thought it was long and dark. And the event that happened later is that we saw that it was longer and darker. We saw that it was longer and darker. Okay, so this is the way we can use the past perfect in order to show which event happened earlier and which event happened later. Okay, in the next slide we have this exercise corrected. First sentence, we decided to walk to waterfall we had heard about. Happened earlier, we had heard about a waterfall. And happened later, we decided to walk to a waterfall. Number two, we had walked 5 or 6 miles when we came to a high rock wall. The event that happened earlier, we had walked 5 or 6 miles. The event that happened later is we came to a high rock wall. Sentence number 3, we saw that it was longer and darker than we had thought. And then the event that happened earlier is we had thought it was long and dark. And the event that happened later is we saw it was longer and darker. So this is the correction of the exercise 1, page 93, in which we identified the past perfect tense in the anecdote. In the next slide, we are going to move to another exercise in which we have some verbs which need to be put in the right tense. In this exercise, you are asked to put the verbs either in the simple past or in the past perfect. Such kind of exercise is important for you in the exam, as you will have some verbs in a text that need to be put in the right tense. So this exercise will help you practice the type of questions you will have in the exam. So, it's on page 93. let's read together and try to answer the question by putting the verbs in the correct tense, either the simple past or the past perfect. One summer weekend, some friends and I decided to walk to a waterfall we had heard about. Some people drive cars and take the food, but the rest of us want to walk. Well, here we have three events. I think that driving the cars and taking the food happened first, and then walking or wanting to walk came later. So here we say some people had driven. Some people had driven cars and taken. Here we use the past perfect. We have had plus the past participle of the verb drive. But here, since we have and we have the same subject, some people, we omitted had, as we will have a repetition. So to avoid repetition, we just wrote the past perfect of the verb take. So some people had driven cars and taken the food, but the rest of us wanted. So it's in the simple past since it came after that event. But the rest of us wanted to walk. Since it was too far to walk along the road, we followed a railroad line. We had walked 5 or 6 miles when we came to a high rock wall where the tusks entered a tunnel. We, verb be, surprised. Nobody, verb tell, us about it. Which event happened first? I think that the telling of this event, or somebody telling them about it, will came first, or would came first. So here we should use the past perfect in the second verb, verb tell, and verb be should be in the simple past. So we can say we were surprised. Nobody had told. Nobody had told us about it. Here we can show that the two actions are successive. The first one is nobody had told us about it, and the second one is we were surprised. The tunnel didn't look very long, but it was very narrow. We knew it would be dangerous if a train came. However, we couldn't climb the rocks or walk around them. And no one wanted to go back. I, the verb have, a good breakfast, but some of the others, the verb not eat. They, the verb want, to get to a waterfall and have lunch. So here, I think that having breakfast came earlier and not eating came earlier, okay? So here we can say that I had here. The first is had, and the second is the past participle of the verb have. I had had a good breakfast, but some of the others hadn't eaten. Hadn't eaten. We have had in the negative, hadn't, and the past participle of the verb eat is eaten. They wanted, yes, they wanted to get to the waterfall and have lunch. Finally, we decided to go through the tunnel. I knew it was foolish, but I went because the others did. As we entered the tunnel, we saw that it was longer and darker than we had thought. Earlier, we, verb decide, to walk and to stay together, but suddenly everyone was frightened and we all began to run. I think here we have the adverb earlier, so here we should use the past perfect because this action came before deciding or being frightened and beginning to run. So here we say, we had decided so earlier we had decided to walk and stay together, but suddenly everyone was frightened and we all began to run. This is crazy, I thought. Why didn't I go back? As we ran faster, it got lighter in the tunnel. Once we were outside, we fell on the ground gasping. No one, verb fall, in the tunnel. We, verb be, all safe. So here, after going outside the tunnel, they are narrating what happened before or what happened first. So here we can say that no one had fallen. No one had fallen. Okay? No one had fallen in the tunnel. We were all safe. Here he goes back to the simple past and he says he used the simple past with the verb be to continue his narration. Okay? So, we were all safe. About a minute later, a train came through. We, verb be, upset because we, verb come, so close to death. What happened first? Being upset or coming so close to death? Well, coming so close to death happened first. So we have to use the past perfect with the verb come. So we were upset because we had come so close to death. So here, come is the past participle of the verb come. Come, came, come. Okay. We, verb be, also angry with ourselves for being so foolish. So here, he also continues the narration. So we say we were. We were also angry. We were also angry with ourselves for being so foolish. Later we, verb here, that two boys, verb die, in that tunnel before. Which action or which event happened first? I think that the boys died came first, and then they heard about that accident. So here we can say, later we heard. Yes, later we heard that two boys had died. That two boys had died in that tunnel before. The two actions, the hearing and the dying or the death of the boy, are two actions in which the dying of the boy or the death of the boy came first. That was when I finally realized the importance of thinking for myself. And here at the end of the story, he gives us the lesson he learned, or the moral of the story. Okay. Well, this is the way you can narrate a story, and you can use the past perfect in order to show which events happened first and which events happened later. The use of the past perfect is very important when narrating in the past. In the next slide, you will have those verbs corrected for you. So, exercise 2, page 93. Number 1, had driven. Number 2, taken. 3, wanted. 4, were. 5, had told. 6, had. 7, hadn't eaten. And 8, wanted. 9, had decided. 10, had fallen. 11, were. 12, were. 13, had come. 14, were. And 15, heard. And 16, had died. So this is the correction of that exercise, and I hope that you take this text as a model for you when you write your personal narrative, or when you write about an experience you lived in the past. You should use the past perfect in order to show the chronological order of events. Well, this is the end of this lecture. Thank you very much and see you next time.